I'd also just like to say one thing. We belong to a group that I am the director. It's called femmes. Femmes, it's right there to UNED. UNED is the university I work in, and some of the group works there. We're like 7 people. We're professors and doctors and individual, also independent researchers. At the end of the paper, at the end of the conference, there is in the last slide the link to our website. So if you are interested, you can just click on that and see the things that we do. We're kind of trying to retrace the Spanish art history from a feminist perspective, which means we do a lot of field work with materials that are not in the official art history books, leaflets, articles, and also oral history, interviews, etc., etc. So, with no further delay, we were going to do it between the both of us. I will comment some of the slides, and she will do most of the, but this is the work we've done together. So it's we just decided because I wanted to make her suffer and read the whole thing, and I just kept for me the easy bits. All right, so thank you very much. And yes, is that?
You start with it.
I have to say this?
Introduction.
This also?
Yeah.
Okay, I forgot.
Or if you want, I start. Yeah.
No, it's okay, it's okay. I just thought this, the Spanish, okay. Yes, in 1975, year of the death of General Franco, the 20th of November, it was the year, celebrating the year of the International Woman Year by the UN. And that year, 1 month before the dictator's death, was celebrated decisive, I would say, exhibition in the city of Toledo, in the Palace of Fuensalida, entitled, and this is our conference today, Women in Today's Culture. The intention was to offer a complete overview of the achievements of women in Spain, the fields of plastic art, literature, and music. The show is itself a perfect symbol of the narrow opinion that was then held in Spain of female creativity, since that is the only way to explain that it presented merely 38 artists, including painters and sculptors, as an adequate number for the feminine creation existing then in all the Spanish territory. It is even more painful to know that this was intended to be a progressive approach, a boast of modernity in view of the likely future that the impending disappearance of the dictatorship entailed. Thus, the exhibit was an effort seeking the favor of the international community, especially the press, of course, and pretending to show an interest in the possibility that women could be creative, although in very small numbers, of course. Throughout the Franco regime, the female role had been exclusively limited, as well legally and socially and also symbolically, to being a wife and mother. Women were excluded for any civic responsibility, economic autonomy, or the possibility of existing in the public sphere as anything else. With this paper, we will focus on how this mentality affected and constrained the women working in the arts. Especially, we will aim also to analyze the criteria behind the selection of artists and what it reveals. Now it's your turn.
Okay. Good evening. First, a few words about the historical context. 1975 was a crucial year for the history of Spain. In November, General Franco died after leading a fierce dictatorship for almost 40 years, since 1939, when he rose to power after winning the Civil War, 1936 to 1939. With him, the country, Spain, was ruled under the concept of national Catholicism. National Catholicism meant an identification of the idea of homeland with Catholic religion. In its most conservative characterization, the rejection of the values of the modern world, especially democratic and liberal ideas, and the union of politics with the ecclesiastical society. For the situation of women, the Franco years supposed an involution with respect to the immediately previous decades, mainly to the period of the Second Republic, 1931 to 1936, in which women had obtained important achievements, although still limited, especially the vote, divorce laws, the right to work and study, and the possibility of financial independence. Franco's conservative ideology, through the sección femenina or feminine section of Falange, the only political organization of women in the Franco regime, erased order and recovered the traditional domestic role that mystified its function as wife and mother. As a result of the global feminist movement of the 60s and 70s, the United Nations designated 1975 the International Women's Year. Spain, which had broken the foreign policy of isolation and had joined this organization in 1955, took part in the commemoration, although the authorities affirm that current legislation already established equality between Spaniards.
Here we see the inaugural conference of the exhibit we are talking on, and it's very interesting to see that majorly every important person was present there. We see the wife of Franco, Carmen Polo de Franco. She's the woman in the center with the flowers and the slightly awkward face. Behind her is the queen, which was not then the queen, but the aspiring queen, would become the queen of the constitutional monarchy that we still have right now. And on the left is the prime minister, Mr. Arias Navarro, who was the bastion and the last fortress, let's say, of the Franco regime. So all those people, so it shows how important the show meant, how much this exhibit meant on a political and international level.
In Spain, the organization of all the activities of the International Women's Year through a national commission was entrusted to the feminine section, whose mission was to provide to the Spanish and international society the idea of a certain change in the dictatorship, consideration of women. Its stated aims were to examine, evaluate and recommend measures and priorities to achieve equality between men and women in all sectors of national life. With the death of Franco, the transition towards democracy began. The period from 1975 to 1982 was very important in Spain because everything that had previously been repressed emerged suddenly and clearly in bright daylight. In relation to the political situation, the path towards democracy was open, and therefore a series of existing events concurred, which we don't have time to comment. Now about the artistic context. In Spain, the breakdown of the Civil War provoked, among many effects of all kinds, the end of the vanguard project that had begun to take place in the Second Republic, and that was mostly of a surrealist nature. The first half of the 30s, freedom and the cultural growth gave rise to a large number of artists in the visual arts. Many of them ended up in exile: Picasso, Oscar Domínguez, Remedios Varo, Esteban Vicente, Dalí, Maruja Mayo, and Miró, although these last three later returned to Spain in 1942, 1946, and 1962 respectively. And therefore the opportunity to create a school in our country was lost. Likewise, the women artists of that period that stayed in Spain could not develop a normal professional life. For example, Deli Tejero, Ángeles Santo, and Piti Bartolozzi.
Yes, in the image we brought an example of Remedios Varo, which is probably the painter you're more familiar with, who was a surrealist. She was exiled in Mexico. She was a great friend of Leonora Carrington. And on the other side, so she was a member of the exile, the artists who went outside of Spain because of the dictatorship. Next to her is Ángeles Santos. Ángeles Santos stayed in Spain, but she was committed to an asylum or a crazy house. And she never went back to her surrealist works. She was silenced in many ways that I don't have time to explain right now.
In any case, it is important to stress how art in the post-war period was to be controlled by a militarized state and the church due to the very nature of the Franco dictatorship. Also, it is necessary to add the logical inexistence of an artistic market. All those facts meant a very serious setback in terms of the concept of art, both in the choice of the theme, religious or moralizing, and in the style, mostly figurative and academic. From 1941 and until 1948, the national exhibitions, or exposiciones nacionales, were held, promoting a realistic style and anecdotic subject matter. This popular art, due to its lack of ambition, favored the artisanal modesty of feminine work.
Here we brought what was the first gold medal to be awarded in those exposiciones nacionales or national exhibitions, which was awarded to this Escuela de Doloriñas, which means the School of Doloriñas, by an artist called Julia Minguillón. That was, as I say, in the first year of its celebration after the Civil War. And I think it's very clear here the kind of modesty and the sentimental and civic content that was rewarded at that time. The important was to have this kind of national spirit of reconciliation in a way, and especially this positioning of women surrounded by children as exactly what it had to be, and not in the outside world, but inside the classroom, inside the house.
In fact, patriotism was much more important than any other artistic consideration. Thus, art slowly took refuge in unquestionable subject matter from both a political and religious point of view, like landscape and still life. As contrast to this official, the official nature of the national exhibition, Eugenio Dors created the Salón de los 11, or Salon of the 11, 1941 to 1954, whose perspective was more aesthetic and less moralizing, although always within the limits of figurative art.
Well, the women selected by them in the 13 years of existence were only 3. One was a dead woman, Marie Blanchard, which you can see here to the right. She was a cubist. The other one was a foreigner, of course, because foreigners don't count really in Spain at that time. Olga Saharov, that you see, she has a kind of Marie-Laurent kind of style. And the third one we didn't bring, but you can kind of think of the School of Doloriñas that I showed you would be that in that kind of thing. It was Rosario de Velasco, whose close connections with the right-wing good society allowed her to enjoy a success that we believe, in our opinion, was way beyond her intrinsic value as an artist.
Also worth mentioning is the School of Madrid, founded by Benjamin Palencia, that incorporated expressionism into the landscape. From that school sprung 2 painters, Menchugal and Maria Antonia Dice. The year 1957 normally is considered, with the El Paso Group Manifesto in Madrid, or the Dowel set in Barcelona and Pórtico in Zaragoza, deserve to be noted as the starting sign for the new plastic generation linked to the principles of abstract expressionism. But even if abstract art was very important in the 60s and 70s, realism was the predominant style in Spain until the 80s, and especially for female artists. For example, the participants for the realist group of Madrid, sometimes called hyper-realistic. There is tendency to naive art in the work of Isabel Villar or Maria Girona, of the surrealism in Pauline Laporta and Maria Carrera, and finally towards the abstract in the landscape of Carmen Lafon or Trinidad Fernandez. Among the abstract artists, mention must be made of Juana Francés of El Paso Group, Elvireta Escobio, within geometric art, Elena Sins and Soledad Sevilla, and in relation to conceptual art, Esther Ferrer, who came from the FAC group and who is probably the pioneer of feminist performance in Spain. And now finally, the exhibition La Mujer en la Cultura Actual, Women in Today's Culture. We have a brief introduction.
Yes, but I didn't comment on the other image. If you can we go back?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, just to show you that this would be a very exemplary kind of image. On the one hand, on the left hand is Juana Francés, which is our maximum abstract expressionist. Her is a history of obstacles, and I think there is only one painting of hers in the Reina Sofia, and in the museum that she created especially for her works, she is not, her and her husband, who was also a famous sculptor, she is not present. So interesting, yes. And then Isabel Quintanilla belongs to the realist group. The realist group in Spain is the only one where women have had a chance. At the beginning, they were totally overshadowed by their male companions, but with time, there has been a reivindication of their work, and right now, they are almost at the same level. They're considered almost at the same level. Sorry.
So now the exhibition Women in Today's Culture, we have records of some collective exhibition of women artists held in Spain between the late 19th and the early 20th centuries, although they have been little investigated so far. For example, those organized in the Salón Amaré in Madrid and in the Sala Parés in Barcelona. Those of this last gallery, one of the most active at that time, were inaugurated in 1896 and had continuity at least until 1904, with an annual or biannual periodicity. The participation was very high, since they showed works of about 100 painters over a week. There were other collective exhibitions of Spanish painters in the following years, organized by newspapers or magazines, such as the Galleries of the Heraldo or the Noroeste, both in Madrid, which took place in 1919 and 1935, respectively. The largest exhibition during Franco's Spain prior to 1975 was the Salón Femenino, the Artl Women's Salon of Today's Art, held in Barcelona between 1962 and 1971 with the support of public institutions, and which was mentioned at the first AWARE meeting in December. Directed by the painter Gloria Morera, this salon wanted to call attention to the feminine artistic creation, above all Spanish, and underline its quality. You can see the cover of the catalogue and the poster. Okay. This exhibition, Women in Today's Culture, could be seen during the month of October 1975 in the Palace of Fuensalida in Toledo, a city near Madrid. It was part of the program of activities of the Commission on Education and Culture of the International Women's Year, organized by the General Department of Artistic and Cultural Heritage and curated by Isabel Cajive, art critic linked to the feminine section. It involved 38 artists, 37 writers, and 4 musicians. The written introduction of the catalogue reflects the contradictions and ambiguities that the last Franco years held with respect to women's liberation and equality, to which we have referred above. While acknowledging the creative women had lacked stimuli and had faced difficulties and injustices, it rejected that they renounced their female attributes. In addition, it insisted on the idea that changes in this direction should occur without taking risk, with prudence, common sense, above all, without endangering either, again, the foundations of society or the principles of nature. As has already been said, in this exhibition, 38 artists showed their works, more than 30 of them painters. The first selection criteria was to choose women who were in active working practice, as indicated by the title of the show, since it did not have a retrospective nature. In addition, all of them were creators of supposedly recognized prestige at the time. They had conducted formal studies, mostly in the fine art schools of Madrid, Barcelona, and Seville, exhibited their works regularly, won prizes and contests. As it made clear by the extensive curriculums that were included in the catalogue, each creator showed a single work recently made from the 1970s. Among the techniques, the styles, and the themes of the works, there was a great variety, more variety than what was actually at view in the Spanish real artistic world. The techniques were diverse, although the most traditional predominated: oil on canvas, in painting, and stone or bronze in sculpture. The most interesting and innovative was the textile art.
Yes, this is what we brought. All the photos are in black and white, but we managed to find a color photo of the first, Aurelia Muñoz. But we find that very interesting, that because we think that the textile art was considered very feminine, they were the most innovative works on show, precisely because that kind of gave them more space. What you're seeing here is three characters by Aurelia Muñoz, who became a famous, always working in textile artist in Spain, and Black Magic by Susana Rolando. There's another one by Maria Asunción Raventos, but we have not brought it, just these two. But I think you can see from all the other pictures that are going to be shown that they are the most innovative.
The styles within the figuration went from the more academic realism of Maria Moreno and Amalia Avia, you can see one of her works, to the lyricism of Pepe Sanchez and the disturbing heads of men by Juana Frances, while in the abstraction, the informalism of Isabel Pons and the geometrism of Elena Sins and Soledad Sevilla stood out. With regard to those more innovative trends, it is interesting to note that their presence in the exhibition tried to contribute to giving it that sought after air of modernity, a strategy that the dictatorship used in the artistic field since the 50s. But undoubtedly there were at least two problematic aspects in this exhibition. In the first place, the absence, since many of the former exiled women artists were still alive and could have participated with some work.
Yes, here are some of women artists that were alive at that time and living in Spain, but they had collaborated with the Republic, and thus they were not asked to present their work. One of them was Maruja Mayo, that I don't know if you're familiar. She's a very, very well-known, with Remedios Varo, one of the foremost surrealist painters. And the other one, Manuela Ballester, she worked very much in printing and all that. All those people were silenced, which is quite incredible. And
the other problematic aspect was the censorship in the subjects of the works. It present, although very subtle, of course there is no art piece with any kind of social content and much less critical to the dictatorship.
We have selected this piece, which is called Libertarian Impulse No. 5, because by Aurora Valero. It stands out for its title, really, because as you can see, the adjective libertarian is, of course, an allusion to anarchism, but the abstract style of the painting makes its interpretation open and really impossible to pin out to any kind of political criticism. So they're always playing in this fine line between revealing and hiding, and we are just trying to show what they were trying to hide.
Along with the landscapes, still lifes, portraits, and abundant abstract works to paintings of religious iconography could be seen.
Yes, we brought those two to show to you because both are signs of the cross, but represented in what they consider was a modern style, which states, of course, that the Catholic Church was still one of the ideological pillars of the Franco regime, and thus had to be represented in this show.
In the democratic period, in 1984 and following this exhibition, will take place an important collective show of women painters and sculptors. Mujeres en el arte español, Women in Spanish Art, 1900-1984 in Madrid. It was a more inclusive exhibition. Around 100 works by women were shown, including those created by the artists present in the exhibition of 1975. And to conclude, we want to highlight three ideas. First, the 1975 show was an intelligent cover-up for the sake of national and especially international press, most of the art being realistic and domestic. It tried to present a variety of styles and techniques that were not actually at work then. It tried to look modern, but the truth is that the ideological ideas and the political and social conditions of women then were still very old-fashioned. Then, number two, behind the apparent modernity, just the very idea of using such a small amount of works to represent Spanish feminine creativity speaks for itself. And third, and the last one, with the end of the Franco regime, Spanish women will be awarded the liberty of a democracy and the power to build their life on their own terms, which will also apply to their art. Thank you very much for your attention.
Well, if you have any questions in French or in English, but I just wanted to point out that this is our website where we are doing this project of recovering the heritage.
It's because the exhibition was really just before Franco died,
Yes,
so nothing like it was planned before.
Yes.
It was all planned before. And then
Yes, but they followed this strategy that was really taking in place at the moment in which, because Spain was after the war, after Franco's won the war, it was under a situation of isolation from
but
the
they
rest.
were opening at one point, like
Yes,
especially for the art, they were using the art.
Exactly. They
And
started
that's-
to use, but that came later on.
Yeah.
That came on
But
around the
it's-
60s, and that's what we're trying to show in this exhibit.
So, in my question, and I don't know a lot, but it seemed that the Spanish government was really smart at exporting Spanish artists. like
Absolutely.
Tapies and other, because
Yes.
Tapies is somebody that everybody loves in Europe, and you wonder how he's so well known. And so, but also at all the Biennale and Venice and other places,
Absolutely.
they were very good at promoting Spain as modern, the place for vacation and all this.
Right,
But
yes.
did they use women or not at all?
Well, that's a very good question. I
Did
would
they
say
use women?
at the beginning it was not necessary because really nobody cared about women. And
But
first,
when you have the feminist movement, then you need to say, oh,
well, there
you're
was no feminist movement in Spain. In Spain, we were still fighting for having the possibility
I
to
know.
work without
Yeah.
having your
Your
husband
husband sign.
write a paper saying, yes, I admit she can work. Or
I know.
to get your passport,
Yes.
you had to have your husband's signature.
I know.
Or to open an account in a bank, which is
But-
incredible. Not just voting, not just you could not divorce. If you divorced, you were sent to an asylum or you were an outcast of society.
Yeah, but it was like the 75 UNESCO was like, oh, we need to also be part of this. So we
Yes.
need to show that
Yes.
Spain is also modern and great. And
Also,
so,
Franco had been sick for 2 years, so
Yeah,
they
so-
all knew he was dying.
but it's interesting that still the queen, or like the princess, and
Yes.
his wife are there because, I mean, I don't know if you remember the first conference, we had all those exhibitions in Italy or other places at the beginning of the century, and there's always and many of the photographs show the wife of the president or the queen or all these people being at the show, which are
No,
always
it was an
sponsored.
important event,
Yeah.
even if it's only 37, which is like incredible, but it was an important event.
So I think
You
that's-
wanted to say something?
No, when you said that there were no feminist organizations, at least until the very end of the dictatorship, that's why we have highlighted that it was the feminine section
of the
who organized
of the
all
fact.
Of the
these,
Falange.
the
Falange,
exhibition,
which is the extreme
yeah.
right.
But isn't it like in the Communist Party? Didn't they have like underground some?
Of course, yes, of course. And what you were saying before about the projection of the Spanish, there's a certain moment, yes,
Yeah.
in which Eisenhower comes to Spain, so the relationship between the United States and Spain are put back into, are reestablished. And so at that point, the States starts giving out money to Spain, and there is a change in the appearance, in all the appearances, yes. So yes, also in the 60s, we have an economic boom. We had that in the paper, but
Yes,
we had to take it out. So there was a change, and we had somebody very intelligent who came into the cultural ministry.
Yeah.
Gonzalo Robles, he has, they're writing a book about him right now, and he realized that he could not go trying to look modern if we didn't have modern artists. So the people like Tapies, who was always a nationalist, I mean, he was very extreme at the end of his life. Also, he was pushed by the nationalist politics, which is another force, to be more nationalist than he would have ever, I think, wanted to be. He was also pushed by that force, but Tapies and El Paso, which we mentioned here, which is really 1957, the moment that there is the beginning of avant-garde in Spain.
But not women, they were not pushing women.
Well, there is
Very
one woman,
few.
which is Juana Frances, the abstract.
Yeah.
She belonged to El Paso,
Okay.
and they threw her out. So yes, but she did belong there. She was one of the first pioneers of abstraction, and she's always mentioned. Every time I have all my students always doing a work of her. Not that I want, but they just feel they have to, which is great. And there is not a great book on her yet. There are several theses. None of them really has published, and none of them is really, really strong. So that the good thing about is that there's lots to write about. There are lots of theses to write about in Spain. So if any of you don't have ideas, just come to Spain and choose any of them. I mean, they're up, and we have many great artists.
Do you have archives?
We have archives. As we were saying before, all the women things are not kept in the same way. And it is very interesting to see that Juana Frances and her husband, the sculptor Pablo Serrano, they donated all their works to the Museum of Valladolid. So I was writing about Juana Frances, so I went to the museum, and there was not a single piece by her, just her husband, which is, I I don't leave it. You know, I wanted to write something, but my friends pushed me out of the museum because they know I get into fights and I can't be fighting all the time. So, but it was incredible, incredible, incredible.
But
And in the Reina Sofia, they have one. And of all these women that you have seen here, we have one of Remedios Varo, one, just one. We have one of Maria Blanchard,
I mean, Maruja Maya.
one of Maruja Maya, no, two of Maruja
2 or 3.
Yes, not, I don't know, three.
stop
Three
the
is too
count,
much.
stop the count, stop
Three
the count.
paintings.
And those are the most well known. So it's incredible.
Stop that. We have wine at the end.
You want to cry? You want to cry?
But thank you very much